into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. John Brown, number 3. Not finished just yet because this book is very long and full of cool shit. Let's get right into it.
So much brown. So much cool brown in this book.
So much brown. What's up? Hello. Welcome to part 3 of the John Brown series, Pod Damn America. I'm Jake. Alex is here.
What's up? I'm Jake's friend and Anders' friend and Naomi's friend. Part 3, John Brown.
Anders.
Hi, I'm Naomi.
Anders Lee here
Perfect. Beautiful.
with Naomi. And we actually have a mutual John Brown.
Oh,
I forgot to mention this last time, but Naomi at Columbia's Teachers College, where she was learning to be a teacher to teach kids about John Brown, one of the professors there was a man named John Brown, who is my cousin once removed, now deceased. But
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Is this where the expression mutual John Brown comes from?
yeah,
Are you and Naomi related?
no, but her
This is like
Second
barely-
cousin. Second, it's not that bad.
her former professor was related to me.
Oh, all right.
What?
Yeah. Isn't
You're
that
just
crazy?
confusing everybody. I had a professor named John Brown at Teachers College. That's who's related distantly to Anders.
Not to my mom's cousin. Yeah.
Right, you have a mutual John Brown, like the expression.
Yeah.
Yeah. MJB.
I have a mutual John Brown with Jake through my friend Jeremy. He's our John Brown.
Yeah.
Oh.
And that he's a guy we both know.
It's also
Okay.
a very common name. It's not really that weird of a thing to happen, you know?
Well, he's the only John Brown I know. So
What's Charlie Brown's dad's name? Do you ever find out? Is that maybe implied?
It's salmon.
Jim.
Yeah. That's why the adults talk like that on Peanuts. It's because they're traumatized because John Brown made them murder people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's dive right back into it. So, first off, just some notes from the audience. I did not realize how many, I guess Christians listen to our show. People are not having our basic, rudimentary, entry-level understanding of, theological Christianity. Apparently, I've been imagining.
Mostly genealogical, they had a problem with that we didn't know who Salmon was.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, we sound like a bunch of Pharisees on here.
Yeah.
My God.
Well, I guess all I can say is, forgive me and thank you for bear with me and thank you for your patience. Someone was making fun of me because there's that part in the first episode we did where I couldn't think of a prayer and I just was grasping for that fucking lay me.
Yeah, you did the Metallica prayer.
If I die before I wake.
Yeah.
Tis my soul, the Lord to take. So the reason I bring that up is because that's going to come up in this episode. Actually, oddly enough, you'll understand when we get there. But anyway,
Ooh.
we're going to go immediately. We're going to pick up right after, right where we left off, which was, basically First Blood. Not really First Blood in the Rambo sense, because he was responding. He was responding like Rambo by saying they drew first blood, right?
They drew first blood.
What Potawatomi was him going, well, they're fucking killing people. All right, I'm going to go, take the law into my own hands or whatever, right? But if you remember...
Well, if you consider the blood of the slaves, it's kind of Rambo first blood, isn't it?
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, this is him saying they drew first blood. This isn't John Brown drawing the first blood. The whole justification for Potawatomi is that, they were killing people. This is in self-defense. They said they were going to kill me and my family.
Right.
So he basically what do you call it? Like counteracted first or whatever. But he when we did this last time, I had kind of had a lot of notes together. I kind of ran out of steam right as we got to that. So just to clear up some things that I hadn't really gotten to in terms of Potawatomi, what happened there was that a man named Henry H. Williams had told him where some members of the court that tried to indict him and his family lived. And he knew these people to be, basically like the crueler of the pro-slavers. One of them owned like what do you call it? What is a convenience store but in the Old West? It's like an old-timey fucking shop.
General store.
There you go. That's what it was.
What do you call a convenience store for slaves?
One of the families of the people he killed was suspected of like pimping Native Americans and shit. All sorts of weird stuff. Yeah.
Pimping.
Like,
Okay.
pimping.
Yeah. And
I
there
know that
also
ain't
was
right.
one of them was a judge, correct?
Well, he didn't actually kill the judge. He killed some people that were affiliated with the court case, essentially.
Maybe you're thinking about how they were judge, jury, and executioner of these five men.
If I remember correctly,
Exactly.
I think he might have actually tried to go after the judge, but the guy just wasn't home or something. But it was in direct retaliation for that. And I forgot to mention this just because it's fucked up. I think I should bring it back up. One of the houses they went to, a bunch of bulldogs fought them, and they killed them with the swords.
Ooh,
Yeah.
whoa.
Damn, dude. Dude, dogs are, I think about this all the time. If you get attacked by a dog, you better have your sword because they are relentless and they're so big.
Yeah.
Anyone can shoot a dog, but cutting a dog up?
Anyone can shoot a dog. We
Yeah.
say that every week on this show.
You never see a cop do the link move where you swirl your sword in a circle at a dog,
Yeah.
kill it until rupees come out of it. So, so what happened to Potawatomi is that he formed a posse, right? And the posse, this is important to list the characters because some of them kind of come back later on. He rode with Frederick, Salmon, Owen, Oliver, his son-in-law Henry Thompson, a guy named James Townsley, and this dude named Theodore Weiner, who was just like a really tough Jewish guy who rode a pony,
Yeah.
which is pretty
We
cool.
all know one of those.
Yeah.
Riding
You get a
6
pony
sons
at your
deep.
bar mitzvah.
Yeah. So Theodore Weiner was kind of an enemy of the guy who owned the general store and was kind of terrorized by him. And also, I'm just going to shift around here. Also, they said he was just like, he was this Austrian dude who just, he was an abolitionist and he would just like get in a fight at the drop of a hat. He was just a hard ass. He was the bear Jew from Inglourious Bastards,
I love it.
So, after
Let the terror begin.
the funny thing that happens after Potawatomi happens is that the South immediately does a 180 from calling abolitionists these like pushover pussies. You can do whatever you want to them. They don't believe in anything. They have no spine, right? They switch to now. It's basically what Republicans do with Antifa. Like now you're the most dangerous existential threat. You're a terrorist. You need to be stopped. So
What's the 19th century version of a concrete milkshake?
Ooh, sassafras, or a sarsaparilla, like a frozen sarsaparilla.
yeah, it's
With
like
that,
sarsaparilla, but then inside of it is like, I guess, tar, because they threw a lot of tar at people.
Yeah,
Like hot tar,
carbonated tar.
Yeah.
that's not sarsaparilla in there. Check the jug.
He put a tampon in my molasses.
There we go.
So Mahala Doyle is the wife of one of the guys that the Brown posse got. And so she testified after this. This is the exact quote from her testimony. With an eye like a snake, he looks like a demon. Apparently a miserable outlaw, he prefers war to peace, that pillage and plunder, may more safely be carried on. And this is the leader of the Free State Party of Kansas. So now he's a demon snake to these people, right? Pretty cool.
Demon snake. Nice.
He's arrived with 20 sons, each more vascular than the last.
So this sort of became the myth that abolitionists have like secret military organizations now, and that they're like banditti. They're savage. They flay people alive. They cut off your nose and your ears, and they scalp people now, since that's like that's a thing that's happening at the time, I guess. So let's see. John Brown and Theodore Weiner, immediately after Potawatomi, hid in the woods. John Brown's favorite thing to do is hide in the woods. He, picked it up from Nat Turner and from the Maroons, and basically just decided that this is like crucial to his plan, and it's the thing God has been telling him to do his whole life. Is part of the attacks, or you have to retreat into the wilderness because the wilderness is like put there for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we all like to hide in the woods.
Not Anders. He'd be like, I'm so bored.
Anders, God put it there for you. Hide in the woods.
Well, we went hiking last week, and Naomi suggested that I listen to a podcast, which was the right call, but I felt like that was wrong. So I didn't, and it's extremely boring if you're not listening to a podcast. If you're listening to a podcast, maybe you're listening to this one as you're in the woods. It's a lot of fun.
Well, you could listen to a natural podcast, i.e. the sounds of birds.
Yeah.
That's what it's trying to do, but yeah.
It wasn't the most exciting hike we went on. It was 4 hours. So
Yeah. Also,
Every hike is just walking in the woods. I mean, you're either on board or not.
You should do what you do walking regularly, and if you listen to podcasts when you do it in the woods.
Why don't we
What's
save
the
this
difference?
this argument for off
It's
mic?
not about Anders. It's about John Brown and the podcast he listened to in the woods.
What would he have listened to?
God. That's his podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, Godcast.
That's the
Instead of guys we fucked, they had God we fucked.
God we praise.
God Save America.
Yeah, there you go.
The title that makes
Wow,
sense.
that would be a podcast name that makes sense. Imagine that.
Or Goddamn America. He listened to our show.
God
Okay.
save America. They'd be like, I think we can work with Andrew Jackson. I really think he's got a good heart. I mean, he's
God, those
compromised.
motherfuckers. Not to get sidetracked, but they were just like talking yesterday about like how Bernie got all the Latino voters, and they were just like, it's clearly because he found leaders in the Latino community or whatever. It couldn't just be that people need to go to the hospital. Very annoying.
Right. Yeah.
It's
People
kind of
need-
racist, is what I'm saying. It's like, oh yeah, no, we listened to Julian Castro or whatever, and
Right,
Also,
who didn't
what-
even support Bernie Sanders? Yeah, but by that logic, shouldn't Warren have won the Latino vote? They had Julian. He's,
Yeah.
the savior.
It was that one video that Bernie had with the mariachi band
I didn't
that
see
went
that.
like
what did,
semi-viral. They were like, "Look, if we should have thought of that, that cost us the race, and that's how you win the game."
Yeah, every Latino was like, "Is it my birthday? Oh, okay."
Also,
Am I on the train?
it also had some to do. I mean, I know there's a lot of, in places like Florida, there's tend to be sort of right wingers in those communities, but like there are a lot of people. I heard anecdotes about this who you would canvass and you would talk to like Latin American people and be like, oh, Bernie Sanders, yeah, that's cool, healthcare, and then they would tell them he opposed the U.S. Interventions in like El Salvador, Nicaragua in the '80s, and they'd be like, oh, fuck yeah, I'm definitely voting for him now.
Yeah.
So that helped too.
Why wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Crazy. Anyways, we can't talk about the Johns. We'll be here all day. So after Potawatomi, John Jr. was going insane in the woods. He basically was just shell-shocked, and he was captured by a guy named Captain Henry Pate, a Southern gentleman military official, right? So basically, at one point, hold on, let me see if I got this right. Pause for a second. So yeah, John Jr. was captured by Pate, right? And then right after that, his older son Jason was discovered by the same captain. And when Captain Pate came upon Jason, Jason ripped his shirt open and yelled, "I have never knowingly injured a human being. Now, if you want my blood, for that there is a mark for you." And then Pate captured him. But he gave him to this guy
So
named
cool.
Captain Wood. They're just like, it's like the Flanders kids or something. Like, they're very naive, you know?
Yeah.
Hereth lie my bare chest, that you might reap it.
Yeah, it's just like, get in the wagon. So
Yeah. Get in the wagon.
Pate captures him and gives him to Captain Wood to be taken prisoner, and they're imprisoned together, John Jr. and Jason, right? But Jason's crazy at this point. Like, he's like not recovered from this bout of mania or whatever's happening, so they had to chain him up, and they trotted him behind the wagon with like his arms tied behind his back, like you know, like when the guy tried to poison Daenerys, and they just fucking tie you to the back of a horse and they make you walk
Right.
like barefoot or whatever. So they trot him to a camp where they chained John Jr. to a stake in the middle of the camp, and since he was so out of his mind, he believed himself to be the commander of the town and just would yell orders at people as they ran by him and stuff, or as they just went about their business. I'd just be like, "Very well, you know, carry that pot of beans."
Wait, so what's his deal again? Is this just PTSD or he has like a mania?
It's old timey, so
Oh, no one knows.
yeah, no one knows. He just was
Okay.
crazy for like the aftermath of the Potawatomi thing, because his dad made him kill someone with a sword, you know.
There were witches spotted in the area. They shirk the light of the Lord.
Yeah. So John Jr. was charged with treason, but everybody else found John Brown's camp and reformed the group with Wiener, Augustus Bundy, a Hungarian Jew, and a carpenter. O.A. Carpenter was his name, who gave them a ride to Prairie City to defend it from this Captain Pate guy, right? So there's just this weird Southern guy suddenly in in this part of the campaign or whatever. James Redpath, the reporter from the New York Tribune, happens upon the John in the woods roasting a pig. He's got like John has like white. This is John Sr., John Brown. He's just roasting a pig in the woods. He's got white stubble. He's got toes coming out of his boots. And this guy Redpath finds him and interviews him for this newspaper, the New York Tribune, I think it is, in New York. That's like one of the biggest abolitionist newspapers in the country. Redpath goes on
They have
to be,
all the abolition articles.
Redpath is Scottish, correct?
sounds right.
Red path.
Yeah. So
Are you
take it
Red
away, Anders.
I'm not a Native American. I know you're going to think I am by my name, but I'm a Scot.
Redpath goes on to become his like biographer, I believe. So he does an interview with him, and John Brown's like just running this camp in the woods, and he'll give you like pig to eat and stuff, but the rules are no swearing or drinking and stuff like that, right? So that's kind of happening, and then what happens next is that this guy, I forget his first name, his last name is Shore. This guy Shore comes to John Brown and tells him that Pate, that guy, has been raiding Prairie City, and the Free Staters are all rolling over, you know, and just like doing the Lawrence, Kansas thing, and just letting him win, right? So Brown gets his men and his crew together, and let's see what happens here.
He's in the safety of the woods, which God gave him,
Yeah.
and now he will strike.
So they ride to Prairie City, and they get in at 4 a.m, and he's praying the next morning when Missourians attack. And when they attack the town and he's in church, he picks up his guns, which he has with him in church while he's praying, and he yells everyone, you know, we got to go battle. He calls for battle. And
it's like Boondock Saints.
yeah, it's fucking cool.
You need to explain this to Bostonians in a certain way for them to really wrap their minds around it.
Yeah, he's totally Boondock Saints, dude. He's like this weird pious warrior with like, sometimes he uses like dual revolvers and shit.
Nice.
He calls for battle and he drives them out, killing 3 of them. And then he moves into Blackjack, which is this boggy swamp where he hears that Pate is. And Pate hears that 100 abolitionists are coming. And that's not true. John Brown's got like 29 guys with him. But there's these like legends.
All his sons.
Yeah. It's mostly him and his weird sons and his family and friends and shit. And then he's got some of this guy Shore's guys. But these legends are starting to build around him because that Potawatomi shit scared Southerners. So now they call him like Old Terrifier, and like they have all these weird nicknames for him and shit. And
Snake Eyes.
So Brown and his men sneak in and basically siege the part of this clearing where this Captain Pate guy is, and they're just kind of locked in this back and forth, shooting, over rocks and shit and around trees. And eventually some of Brown's men don't think anything this is going to work. So they kind of desert. They like run off into this other field, and they're just like figuring out what to do, how to make their next move. So Brown sees him and he runs across the field and he goes, "Hey, I don't mind that you left. I have an idea. You should run over there and kill all their horses and mules." All right. And they do it. And then as all this chaos is breaking out, because this army has been, kind of just like demobilized via all their horses and mules being murdered.
Via horse murder.
Yeah.
Yeah, stranded.
So Frederick, his son, bursts into the field on Owen's horse, which is named Red Ned Scarlet, waving a sword.
That's a good horse name.
Oh, yeah. So out of nowhere, this kid just bursts into the field waving a sword on top of a horse, screaming, "Hurrah! We've got him surrounded. Come on, boys. We've severed communications." And then the Captain Pate surrenders immediately. And
Wow.
it's a complete blow.
I mean, when you hear something like that, I mean, what else can you do? He said, "Hurrah! The horse is dead."
Yeah.
The confidence on the man just scared him.
Yeah.
That's classic deal making. That's deal making 101.
Yeah, and it's this kind of like this thing that happens like around this time, it just happened in like the American Revolution a lot, where one of the armies is doing like formal duel-y stuff, and then he's like, John Brown's just like a guerrilla psycho. And so what happens after this is that Pate sends a guy over to John's side of the army, like to surrender, and John just goes, Are you Captain Pate?" The guy goes, "No." And he goes, "Fucking send him over here." He keeps one of the guys,
I see where this is going.
and then Captain Pate comes over and he tells him to surrender, and the guy's like, "All right, well, I'm not so sure about that." And then, hang on, let me pause. So Pate was not used to seeing such nerve in abolitionists. Brown and 8 of his men went down to the wagon barricade, where Brown told Pate's lieutenant to command the pro-slavery troops, who now numbered 23, to surrender their arms. The lieutenant balked and looked at Pate, who also hesitated. Brown quickly cocked a pistol and pointed it at Pate's head, hissing, "Give the order!"
Yeah.
Within seconds, the pro-slavery force handed over their weapons, which Brown's party loaded into wagons to be hauled away. And so, with only 9 on his side, Brown took 23 prisoners, as well as camp provisions, and a few remaining horses. So, he's basically just like, "Who's fucking crazy?" He he's just kind of pulling shit that like they didn't expect from, these abolitionists or whatever. So
I mean, that's why they call him the plague of the whatever the old timey fucking name he has now.
yeah. He's got a few of them. Like there's like there's like a lot of weird ones. Like Old Terrifier is a good one, and then I'll see if I can come across a few.
Old Terrifier, not a great nickname. That seems like they could have spent a few more minutes in the shop on that one.
Yeah.
Old scary man, terrifying individual.
Spooky.
So all of this happens. They take the weapons and the horses from Pate's army. All of this happens. He puts a gun to guy's head. He takes his weapons. He takes his horses. They win the battle. After the battle, Salmon was crippled by an event that was not combat related. It doesn't say what it was. I guess a wagon just fell on him or some shit.
Infuriating.
Yeah. So
Salmon got a better gig off camera and decided not to take part anymore.
Yeah. So John Brown won blackjack, but he was forced by the federal government basically to give up Pate and the spoils. So as he's marching his prisoners back into town to have them tried, the feds basically stepped in and they took everything he won away from him. But he took.
What part of this is legal? Like, how does he get away with it at all once the feds are involved?
I think it's just really complicated because there's so little communication and all this is such contested territory. So there's all this stuff going on,
Right.
like laws being put into place, but people arguing about whether it's even moral to uphold them, like the Fugitive Slave
Right.
Act or the fucking
Yeah.
black laws and stuff.
With all the lynchings, there's definitely like mobile violent mobs going around, but I think it's probably like what we see when there's like a right-wing uprising now, like a Bundy Ranch kind of thing, where the feds come across 30 guys armed to the teeth and are like, we're going to take the stuff you stole and leave.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
but
have
they,
a lot of very slow guns that
Yeah.
scare us.
What's funny because around this time there was American expansionism that was sort of like based on maintaining the status quo of like half slave state, half free state. And like we talked about this a little bit on the Mexican American War episode, but they would keep like expanding and say like we got a little slave place here, a little free place here. Like they would keep having to do it like two at the same
just
time,
to keep the representation even.
right.
Yeah.
To maintain the stasis.
Another thing that's happening is that depending on who's president and who's like governor of Kansas, for example, a lot of times someone who is maybe like a Democrat, but they're not a hardcore, at the time Democrats were like the other side or whatever. They're not like a hardcore pro-slavery person. They'll sort of step in when there's violence and say, what is the fucking when you're like kind of forgiven for your debt or whatever? What is that word I'm looking for?
Oh, Jubilee?
Absolved.
There's like a truce or whatever, basically, where he's saying like no one will be charged for anything as long as everyone just stops fighting because they just didn't know what else to do to get.
Everybody just get along.
Yeah.
You're ruining Christmas.
But anyways, after this, Brown goes to Nebraska and he meets this guy named Aaron Dwight Stevens, a.k.a. Charles Whipple, which is his alias. He's a soldier turned deserter, turned Indian friend, turned Free Stater, turned John Brown's lieutenant. So he's starting to this next period of his life, he's starting to just form his suicide squad. And it's interesting because they're not all like him. Like this guy is an agnostic deist who believes in the god of nature, and he's a spiritualist and does seances and shit. And
right.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and at one point, Brown's pretty much the only Puritan or even Christian in his own posse, but he just doesn't really care because he believes in the.
Yeah, and he picks up Boomerang Jack, the meanest criminal this side of Australia.
Yeah. He returns to Lawrence. John Jr. is still in jail, and he forms a gang called the Kansas Regulars. Around this time, violence is starting to really bubble up again on the pro-slave side. So, for example, one thing that happens is a pro-slave ruffian named Fugert is reported to have made a $6 bet in, a bar for beer, basically.
Wow.
Or whiskey.
Like $1 million in today's money.
Right. That's he's sending his kids to NYU with that money.
Yeah. His fucking name is Fugert. He
I
can't stop thinking of Cubert.
he basically stands up in the middle of the bar and goes, I'll bet anyone $6 I can't scalp an abolitionist in 2 hours. And people throw down money, and then he walks out into the street and he just like shoots a guy and then cuts his fucking scalp off after he shoots him. And he comes back in.
They gotta stop accepting Cugert's bets. I mean, this is only encouraging that kind of behavior.
And he had no challengers.
Everyone was bored.
Yeah. Crazy shit like that.
That might not even have been an abolitionist, first of all.
Right. He just shot a guy.
If you're living in a slave society, the more people you shoot, the less.
Right.
That's how you.
What?
I'm trying to rationalize mass murder. Yeah.
Fucking Cugert apologist, as always, Anders.
Cugert. So John Brown's heading towards Osawatomie because he deduced a pro-slavery attack would happen there. This guy named General John W. Reed is leading an army to kill abolitionists and take Osawatomie, Topeka, and then Lawrence. That's Reed's ultimate plan. It's like this 3-town sack. One morning, he comes upon Frederick, who's feeding horses at 6 a.m. at his uncle's house. Frederick walks out to greet him and goes, "I know you," and is shot and killed in the chest by Reed. Right?
He says he's Frederick Brown. He identifies himself.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, you're a brown kid."
Yeah.
Tisk tisk.
Yeah, the brown kids are so naive. They're like, "Hi, are you my friend? I'm one of the brown people, or the brown clan."
I'm Snake Eyes Jr.
Yeah. So John Brown hears about it, and he takes arms with his guy named Parsons, who's never seen combat. And when Parsons asks him his advice, Brown says, "Take more care to end life well than live long." He says all this really intense shit throughout this.
Right.
Basically what he's saying there is if you get shot, die. Don't try to drag it out because it's going to fucking hurt.
It's better to burn out than to flame away.
So Brown ambushes Reed in the woods, but has to retreat and turn around past this river. And basically, when he's on the other side of the river, after he's attacked the guy and he's kind of put got a couple bullets in his army, got a little bit of a hit going, he has to go back and he sees Osawatomie just burning. And as the city's burning and smoldering, he says, "God sees it. I have only a short time to live, only one death to die, and I will die fighting for this cause. There will be no more peace in this land until slavery is done for. I will give them something else to do than extend slave territory. I will carry the war into Africa." It's a fucking crazy person.
What does that mean?
So he's just doing poetry now.
Yeah. Well,
Apparently, it was a code word for Southern slave territory.
Africa. Really? Okay.
Smart.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense because he did start to speak in code at this time also. For example, whenever he would talk about Harper's Ferry, which is the thing that he was starting to kind of plan, not in the open, but he would speak about it to his co-conspirators, he'd always refer to it in letters as the business or the mill, So whenever he was raising money for Harper's Ferry, he'd be like, we almost have enough money to start the mill. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Quick aside. I learned over the weekend that if this might be a good thing to know for some of our African American listeners, but the country of Ghana is is encouraging Black Americans to move there, and they're helping them get grants and stuff.
Holy shit!
Want to get out of this hellhole? Then good opportunity.
That's a real thing.
Yeah, because that was part of the slave coast. The the west coast of Africa. A lot of slaves were taken from that area. So
Yeah,
people
I
were
recommend
enslaved
looking
there.
into, everything involved into moving to another continent before you go do it. But good
Yeah.
luck. It'll probably be a little different.
Um,
In a good way, I think.
I have no idea. I know nothing about Ghana.
I'm not even gonna touch even in a.
Anders with the weekly Ghana update we get every week.
I'm not gonna tell anyone to go back to.
Helpful info.
Did you just tell people to go back
Oh,
to
man.
Africa?
Wow.
He just keeps saying,
No, choose
They're offering
what you want to do. Do what you want to do. This is on the table. Because I want to leave
Right.
America.
Well, Ghana's not going to take you.
Yeah.
If a friendly listener takes Ghana up on this offer, maybe they'll lend a hand one day when Anders Lee needs to get out of town.
If you apply to move to Ghana, you need to record the entire process because I want to be there.
It's going to be a deep lit level of Patreon. It's going to be a $500 a month listen.
You have to.
Skills, I can do a Scottish accent.
You have to record a comedy album for Netflix called "You Gonna Be Kidding Me."
No.
I'm not. Don't blame me for that joke. That was what's her face?
Chelsea. No, not Chelsea. Yeah, Chelsea.
One of those blonde lady comedians.
Chelsea Peretti?
Peretti. Yes.
No.
Thank you.
No. That wasn't her. Was that Handler?
That wasn't her?
It was Eliza Schlesinger.
I think that's who it was. You gonna be kidding me? Remember? All right.
Chelsea Handler.
I'm gonna look it up real quick.
It is either way a different country. Alas.
It's a book. It's a book by the Chelseans.
Chelsea Handler.
Maybe we. That might be a fun.
Chelseans?
I thought that
Chelsea
was a
Handler.
special. That was like the name of a special.
Yeah.
That's what I thought too. I thought it was Peretti.
No.
Yeah, you're.
Anyway, John Brown, he's in a tough spot.
All right.
Sorry.
All right.
So we're after Osawatomie before Blackjack.
No, Blackjack already happened. It was Blackjack and then.
Okay, Blackjack's over.
This is basically. Wait, this is Osawatomie, I think, right? Well, here's what happens next, right? So, as the city's burning, I forgot to mention it's at one point when we were talking about Potawatomi, but John Brown has a friend, like an indigenous friend named Ottawa Jones, who he when he's zipping around in the woods, hangs out with, and just they work together and stuff. Ottawa Jones is a Native American who had run a hotel, and his hotel was burned to the ground by pro-slavers. So he becomes kind of part of the abolitionist cause, and he helps Brown a lot. Well, Ottawa Jones's house is burned down in Osawatomie, and let's see. So then John Jr. starts sending these letters, though. So basically, the thing about Osawatomie is that he didn't beat this captain, but he fucked him up pretty bad. And at that point, his myth had already been growing, and people are starting to hear about Potawatomi and Blackjack and stuff like that. So John Jr. starts sending his dad letters because I guess he's regained his sanity, but he's still just in jail. And he's telling him, dude, everyone is, terrified of you down here. Everyone is just speaking about you like you're this, werewolf, just, stalking in the woods. And, I saw him kill,
And they're
30
in jail.
guys. Yeah. Well, I think he's hearing people, in the town and stuff. Because I think they just, throw you in a fucking,
They have him in a cage in the town square, yeah. That was, the closest they had to, medical help back then. They just put you in the stocks in the middle of town.
Yeah. So Brown becomes famous, and Osawatomie gives the Free States a sort of legitimacy, and they begin to formally raid pro-slave towns and win. So this tips things to a certain degree. I guess if you're going to look at this in the grand historical sense in terms of moving towards the Civil War. Before, Brown was a lunatic, and no one agreed with his violence and stuff like that, or his theories on violence. And now this is starting to turn into, we talked about, the legitimized violence, the idea of getting militias together and fighting against these towns that have been terrorizing you from in the name of the institution of slavery.
That's just what happens when you win a little, I feel like.
Yeah.
Is it's somewhat validated.
But yeah, I think it also has to do with the Fugitive Slave Act and the enforcement of that, and you know, and the Dred Scott decision making slavery legal. So everybody's feeling like a little exasperated with the legal possibilities.
Yeah, that is definitely like the other factor for sure.
And yeah, this is around the time when Frederick Douglass writes The Ballad or the Bullet.
Yeah. At one point, John Brown is like standing on a crate in the middle of a town explaining combat to a bunch of like, you know, newly radicalized people when there's this newly appointed Governor Geary who rides into town on a horse and he demands a truce on both sides. So that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, there's people that come in and they just go like, okay, like, we're not going to take a side here. You just have to stop fucking fighting. So Brown flees to this town called Tabor, Iowa. That's an abolitionist town. And then he goes back to North Elba to see Mary and his younger kids. And eventually makes it to Boston around 1857. And let's see. In Boston, he meets a bunch of people who were like told the story of blackjack. A child gives him money and just asks him to tell him, like, he's like, "Here's $1, Mr. Brown. Will you tell me a story about your childhood someday?" And then like 6 months later, the kid gets this crazy fucking long scrawling letter in the mail from John Brown. It's all misspelled and shit because he doesn't really know how to write. He's kind of illiterate.
Yeah.
Well,
there's nothing in the Bible that says you got to write.
Well, also, like, a lot of the grammar and stuff wasn't fixed back then. It was just kind of like make your own, you know.
It was freestyle.
Yeah.
So around this
That's
time,
a Boston thing. The kids that ask you your story. Oh, I'm so tired of it.
So around this time, he starts to acquire his what's known as his Secret Six, which are his financial backers, who are basically raising money for this project, Harper's Ferry, and a lot of them he meets in the Northeast, you know, in New England around Boston and in Concord, right? Because Concord's where the fucking transcendentalists are. And it's really weird because, you know, if you know anything about the transcendentalists, right, namely the two big guys, Emerson and Thoreau, they are, you know, essentially just shitty, like, libertarian guys. Like, they're all about self-reliance and, you know, no government, and they're like doing things like going to hanging out in the woods for a year and writing a book.
Right.
But then having their sister deliver food to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Having your
They're
wife.
like skanks, and there's like a legion of them. What's up? I'm here. I'm by Walden Pond. I'm eating my gloves.
I'm Big J Oak Tree person.
Yeah.
He's just roasting plants around town. They're like, I'll change his. What is that? Is that like your mother give you that name? Ferns, you ever hey Ferns, have you ever fucked an Asian?
Yeah.
I know this one has. The way the wind's blowing on you.
You just hear the wind very strongly in the background.
So we're going to go through them a little bit to kind of wrap our heads around this, because it is weird that they became hardcore abolitionists and supporters of abolition, because at first they were very racist. I mean, they probably still were even into the abolitionist stuff, but they were like, in their early writings of like Emerson and Thoreau, I mean, it was just, you know, just that shit where they would be like, look at him, he's not as developed as the Caucasian male, he's an infant, you know?
Right.
I live in the suburbs. I think everyone likes me.
Yeah, I've heard different sort of tales about, or not tales, but narratives about the white abolitionist movement in North America, because I have heard that there was a lot of paternalism and sort of interpersonal racism against black people. Like a lot of the abolitionists who supported and funded these causes were personally racist, but sometimes according to Eric Foner, that gets somewhat exaggerated. And there were a lot of people like John Brown who were anti-racist, who practiced what they preached.
Yeah,
it really just speaks to the atrociousness of racism, even just aesthetically, that you can be racist and still be like, we shouldn't do this. This is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of how I feel
it's bad,
about,
but black people don't deserve that.
Yeah,
I mean, here's how I can relate to it. I think it's probably wrong to eat meat, but I do, because unless they just fix the whole fucking farming thing in the industry and make it really easy and outlaw meat, that's just part of my life. I have decided fucking not to really go that hard about, right? So I'm sure that there are just mental gymnastics that everybody goes through or whatever. But that being said, you're probably right about that. I am working off of this one book here, and right around this part, I really started to notice that this author seemed to have a lot of empathy for the transcendentalists, which gave me some pause about maybe what their own philosophy is. But they made a pretty good case for how the transcendentalists eventually became sort of radicalized. So the Secret Six are George Luther Stearns, Garrett Smith, Thomas Wentworth Higginson, Samuel Gridley, Howe, Theodore Parker, and the main guy is Franklin B. Sanborn, right? At one point, John appeared before the Massachusetts state legislature to appeal for a bill for funds to Kansas, gave a crazy speech, held up the shackles that John Jr. wore,
Damn.
told the story of Frederick being murdered, and conveniently did not mention Potawatomi. So another thing that's happening right now is he's got this skeleton in his closet, which is that he's starting to become a celebrity, and he's really downplaying, he's kind of trying to hide the Potawatomi thing because he's, I think, realizing that was more murder than political,
it wasn't a battle per se.
People were really interested in supporting the Free Soilers movement in Kansas and winning that state over.
Right. It was, and at that time, it was after Potawatomi, but there was a play that came out, and I think it was on Broadway by
another play.
Huh?
Another play.
Yeah, but it was called Osawatomie Brown, and it was about John Brown, and it was had just happened, the Potawatomi, killings, and they staged it. It was this is our late breaking news, as if a plane crash somewhere. You had to get the actors and come to reenact it ASAP.
Wow.
Oh no, the plane!
No plane.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a current event that people would reenact in the way, because you can't really reenact the coronavirus in a very exciting way. But I guess that's what
make a song about it.
Yeah, that's what they would have done.
The fucking
everywhere. The virus is everywhere.
No, man.
Articles
Chaz.
on my face.
I want to write a musical about the fucking
Yeah.
Chaz. That would be so fun.
That's what they would have
do
had
that.
to do in the 19th century, is just act it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I fully support a Chaz musical. I want to get that off the ground as soon as we can.
Watching Hamilton made me kind of have musical brain, but I was oh, this sucks, but I want to write a better one,
I watched Sweeney Todd recently, and they don't even try to rhyme in that.
Yeah. The musicals are such bullshit because a lot of the times they're not rhyming and they're barely singing. They're just this music and now some expositive dialogue about how we need to get to the next thing, and then they just look at each other like that. It's fucking weird.
They call my son mad. They lock him in the town.
So after he gave that speech to the government, the bill failed, so he wasn't able to formally raise money for Kansas for the Free State cause in that particular instance. But he sort of started to basically just try to start forming his own posse and funding Harper's Ferry. He kind of got to that point by realizing that, like, he kind of... they didn't need him in a lot of the militia stuff anymore. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting dynamic with it. But one of the things he's doing right now is like putting together money to make gear for the raid. So he finds this blacksmith, and he explains to him that he wants to make pikes out of like these, like, basically you take a pole and you weld a goddamn Bowie knife to the top of it to make like a fucking pike, which is cool because it's got the Bowie knife is a particularly like American spin on it.
Damn.
Money gets caught up with his blacksmith because he can't quite pay him for him, and so they're just getting shipped around, not assembled and stuff.
The blacksmith is just doing ads now, like, due to a shipping error, I am loaded up with Bowie knife pikes. They're on sale.
I don't know why I wrote this down. I think I just thought it was funny. So one of the Secret Six, Parker, once published in all caps, "One held against his will has a natural right to kill everyone who seeks to prevent his enjoyment of liberty." So they were libertarian fucking cucks.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Emerson, like in his early days, would call all abolitionists angry bigots. And he said that in Self-Reliance, he called abolitionists angry bigots. But later on, in a work he wrote called Courage, later in his life, he called John Brown Jesus Christ. He just compared him to the Lord.
Yeah.
Owned.
Yeah.
Wait.
Well, mainly because John Brown got popular later.
Right.
It's like...
Who were they bigoted against, supposedly?
Yeah.
Other whites?
I'm very locked into this thing I thought of calling abolitionists anti-slaw.
In my notes, I call them abos, but it sounds like abortions.
I mean, in many ways, they were sort of similar. Like the Underground Railroad, in particular, is very similar to Antifa in that it's like sort of it was very decentralized. Like it was, with the history of it, of course, is important and interesting, but it wasn't like this, really fastidious, well-organized system. It was just like a very loose network of a few people.
Oh yeah. I mean, I hate to say it because this is, pretty basic take, but there's a lot of parallels here with like the way that they went from treating abolitionists as like cowards to an existential threat, and with all the stuff that's coming out of these fucking these transcendentalists and people.
It's pretty helpful to think of, though, because right now with Antifa, I feel like it's easy to get to despair the lack of organization. But if you look at something like the Underground Railroad, that's like a completely decentralized thing that was very helpful to people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a precursor to the larger, systemic, inevitable change, which was the war.
Yeah.
The war was also helpful.
Yeah.
Shout out to the war.
Well, I mean, I guess that's why I'm kind of got this stuff on the brain right now, is because I'm like, these are the conditions that preceded the Civil War. Like, what's going to happen next right now? Because so much of this stuff like echoes.
As federal agents are descending on our cities.
Yeah. Listening to our podcast.
Learn karate if you can.
Thoreau wrote, "The Indian does not often dance unless it is the war dance." I don't know. They were also really racist towards the Irish at this time. I know that's a thing that like angry white guys always say, but they also they didn't like them either.
They say it because it's true.
Yeah.
They've been through so much.
We were still, on the rim of the melting pot. We hadn't totally plopped in and gotten melted.
It took around 75 years of being cops before they were just like, yeah you're white now.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
One thing that was cool about Brown is that he kept that Captain Pate's Bowie knife on his leg, after he took it from him. He managed to keep that, even though they took all the spoils away from him. And yeah, I mean, Brown just turns into a hardcore motherfucker after this. It's pretty cool. He goes. Wait a minute. Let me fucking pause so I can find this. Some more stuff about the Transcendentalists. In the early going, Transcendentalism was closely allied to non-resistance. Bronson Alcott attended conventions of Garrison's Peace Society, who was the big, pacifist enemy of John Brown ideologically. Stating in his diary, "I regard non-resistance as the germ of the new church." Alcott instituted versions of non-resistance at the Temple School, where naughty students were asked to punish their teachers.
What?
This is what I'm saying. This is just like the libertarians with their weird-ass schools that we talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also like John Brown's thing when he beat his kid, he would give the kid the switch and say,
Yeah.
"Turn around, beat me."
Really?
There's
Yeah,
some weird
we went
shit.
over it in
Oh,
part
good,
two.
That's right. Sorry.
There was some weird shit going on with kids on all sides of this.
There's bad kids on all sides.
So yeah, I guess to kind of sum up what I think happened though with them and why they became so enamored with them is that Brown appeared in Concord. He started speaking, and they all just had these these experiences, I guess, where they were just like so taken by this guy's speaking and his ideas being radical. And it probably didn't hurt that he was some crazy white guy, who they were able to project a lot of like respect onto and stuff. But he basically came at a time where he appealed to, I guess, what they saw as this individualism, even though it's really not. I mean, he's, kind of an altruist. But they also liked that he was so into nature because he would, take care of, horses and sheep and shit. And he had that whole thing where he's like, God, wants me to live in the woods and stuff. So they saw that as, this serendipitous message of, oh, he's like us. He gets nature, because they were...
I love the woods.
Yeah,
That's great. The woods is great.
Because their whole thing is,
plantations ruin the woods.
yeah, they would go on, these walks and then write about, how that, isn't the government like an owl that won't stop hooting at you,
Yes. In a way, leaves are slaves.
They also liked him because around this time, Oliver Cromwell, who was his hero and who he talked about, was someone who's being really rehabilitated by this author named Carlyle, because he just had this famous biography put out where he sort of posed just an argument of the part where where Cromwell killed a bunch of fucking Irish Catholics just for being Catholic. They started to compartmentalize that, I guess, the same way that they compartmentalized John Brown's violence. And even the Potawatomi stuff, they're just like, yeah, it's a byproduct of this otherwise good thing. Sometimes people get killed or whatever. But the main thing is that in 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act was passed right before they met John Brown, right? And so I think it primed them on this issue because none of these motherfuckers ever hated slavery until the federal government told them, that you have to enforce it, basically. So they're contrarian.
Each person is responsible for
right
finding the fugitive slaves. And
yeah, and that put them in a situation to think to be in opposition to the federal government and it being the thing that all of a sudden slavery is not framed as this individual rights thing, right? It's framed as 1984, the government is making you participate in it. And then Brown comes along, and for whatever reason, I guess that's the argument at least this book poses, which I think makes kind of sense, but who the fuck knows,
Yeah, slavery was just sort of a given until this law reveals that this ruling reveals that oh no, this doesn't come out of nowhere. This is something that the state sort of procures and supports, and our economy fucking runs on, and doesn't have to be necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, it's also this weird shit you see with conservatives and masks right now, where if it's if you tell them they're not allowed to wear masks, they're like, fuck you, I'm gonna wear a mask. But then if the government is hi, I'm the president, you have to wear a mask, they're like, fuck you, I'm not gonna, There's just,
Right.
you know,
You got to do reverse psychology on them.
Yeah.
You got to tell, you got to start like saying that masks are racist, or like trying to cancel masks.
Yeah.
So that, like, that somehow
black mask is the same as blackface.
right.
Something
and
like
then they'll
that.
all wear black masks.
Black mask is the same as blackface. You took the words out of my mouth.
That's a famous Frantz Fanon book.
Yeah.
let them wear masks if, you know, let them be racist. I think we're onto something here.
Am I triggering you with the half of my face that's covered?
Yeah. I mean, I made a joke about basically that a long time ago. Got the government called on me. Let people be racist. All right. You know, if it helps. So around this time, he's trying to raise money for Harper's Ferry, and he starts to develop this black sense of humor. He starts to say things like, "Here are 18 lives. I should hate to spoil these carpets, but you know I cannot be taken alive." I can't remember what the fuck this was in context of.
Oh yeah. He was staying with I forget who he was staying with as a guest. And because he was basically a fugitive at this point. Like there were people in the South who wanted him dead and they wanted to capture him while he was, you know, giving speeches at the Massachusetts legislature. But he was staying at somebody's house and he's like, I should hate to spoil your carpets because they won't take me alive.
That's right. Because he's saying, like, if they fucking come get me, I'm going to bleed all over the place. Yeah. So he starts to become kind of funny.
It's pretty cool that, like, he can have waged 3 battles against towns, won them, and then go teach at a college, and there's no federal infrastructure to be like, yeah, this guy murdered 100 people.
That's the thing, dude. He's like, when he's in the South, he's like Omar. Like from The Wire, like they're like he's technically an outlaw, but they run and shit when he's like walking around, and then when he's in the North, he's just like a celebrity and stuff. It's really cool, and he just starts saying like all this. I wrote down so many of these lines because they just remind me of like, well, you know, that like you come for the king, you better not miss, like that fucking thing from The Wire. Yeah.
Good line.
So he returns to Kansas, kind of broke. He's got some funds. George Stearns is buying him a ton of revolvers. He just has tons and tons of revolvers being shipped to him. And
this was the myth of Beecher's Bibles, apparently, right? Like what
happened?
There was Henry Ward Beecher, this preacher in New York. He would raise money for John Brown and supposedly ship rifles or guns in cutout Bibles.
Oh, badass.
The size of the Bible you would need to put a rifle in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's definitely not a rifle. It's a revolver.
Oh, right, yeah.
It has all the words. You're going to love this 4-foot tall Bible.
I lost my glasses. I need some big print.
Yeah.
Really big print Bible.
It's a children's storybook. Giant book.
You can hear the metal clanging. Oh, that's God.
I heard around this time too, he was like staying in a judge's house in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, that's where he said I'd hate to spoil the carpet.
Oh right,
That's
okay.
what it was.
He also stayed in 1858. I don't know if we're there yet with Frederick Douglass.
Yeah.
Were you going to talk about that?
I can't remember. Let's see if I have some notes on it, but if I don't, go ahead and chime in.
I do.
I bet they got up to some wild stuff.
Yeah, Freddie D. And so John Brown, along with, I guess, the total shift in the movement, definitely had an influence on Douglass because he was, you know, a pacifist. And then now he started to talk about how important agitation was and how
around this apartment, Frederick Douglass is known as Freddie D. Just to clarify.
Freddie D. Yeah.
Freddie D. Yes.
She did say that, and I was like, that sounds like the way Anders would say it, but I won't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something I've subconsciously taken from Anders, and I regret it.
It's just you in front of like a class of 14-year-olds like, Freddie D, what's your favorite work of his?
Yeah. So he stayed with Frederick for a month and, you know, kind of like rented a room there. And he would speak with Frederick Douglass every day about kind of building a militarized part of the Underground Railroad around where Harper's Ferry was.
Right.
Like, and he believed like once he got this area fortified in the mountains, then you could set up this society. And he wrote this constitution. And he would talk about this constitution daily of this new society. And it started to bore Frederick Douglass horribly, and he couldn't stand it. And then he would also talk about his military plans, and Douglass wasn't that interested in it, but his kids would gather around and he would show them maps and like plan out his attacks with blocks and stuff. And Douglas's kids were into it, but not Douglas. But what Douglas said around this time was that I'm willing to speak for the slave, but John Brown is willing to die for the slave. And he admired him for that.
Right. Okay, I remembered. I had a note about that, which is that when Brown lived at Freddie, I wrote Freddie D in my notes because I remembered when John Brown lived at Freddie D's house, he wrote his own constitution for his new America, basically, that he envisioned after his little revolution. And it was presented by his own lawyer as proof of his insanity in his courtroom because it was batshit crazy, I guess, or at least for the time. So that's another thing about Brown that's kind of interesting is that he was kind of a patriot. Like he wasn't like for the overthrow of the United States. He was just like he would argue that like the Constitution is actually really good and implies that everyone's equal. It's just that the government in place right now is misinterpreting it. And so when he did sort of form like, very democratic debates and meetings with intellectuals and, he included a lot of black leaders, he would argue with them because they would want to overthrow America and just start a new country. And he would say, no. It's we're going to just kind of write the Constitution, but he kind of was a Constitution guy. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part of John Brown's appeal is like, because there's so much infighting between abolitionists, they were like, oh, we can get behind this guy because, he's so crazy.
And it seems like there wouldn't have been that much of a contradiction back then between like violence and reforming the law. Because that's kind of how shit went down in the early parts of this country. Militias and stuff like that form different,
I mean, if you look at people who want to get rid of America now, what's the first thing they say is this country was founded by slave owners, whereas in 1850, slavery is legal.
Yeah.
So you just be like, we fucked the law up. Let's redo it.
Yeah. He has this British drill instructor he hired to.
Oh yeah.
To just like drill his troops and stuff. And the guy kind of becomes more and more of a pain in the ass and is like collecting a paycheck and not really doing anything. And he lets him go. And this proves to be probably, if there's a major factor other than just his raid not working, maybe the thing that brought him down. Because this guy then gets pissed off.
Forbes is his name.
Forbes, that's what it was, yeah. He
fought in the Italian Revolution.
Right.
With Garibaldi, 1848.
Yeah, but he's really just kind of out for money. And after he's sort of doesn't like John Brown anymore, he's going around from town to town trying to get people to get judges to sue John Brown, to give him his money back and stuff that he feels slighted on. And he starts telling people about the Harper's Ferry raid. So this really fucks up the plan of the raid because now some people are aware or at least suspect that he's planning it. So the secret's kind of out.
And it has to be delayed for a year.
Right.
Yeah, the other thing about Hugh Forbes is Brown had this military camp planned in Iowa where he would train people. But as he's trying to recruit people, Kansas kind of has this influx of thousands of immigrants and free soilers. So it looks like Kansas is going to be a free state. It's no longer kind of a battleground. And people, there's less fervor for that fight, and therefore less recruits. And Hugh Forbes shows up to this training camp and he was also like supposed to write a drill manual for guerrilla warfare or something.
Yeah.
And he shows up and then nobody's there, and like maybe 20 people are there, and he comes to collect his payment, and Brown doesn't have anything.
Right. Yeah, because Brown, was always pretty hard up for cash, and then like even when he was hitting up the Secret Six, they often, would not be able to give him as much money as he wanted for this thing. I mean, at the numbers, I don't really know exactly the inflation or whatever, but he was asking for like $1,000 here and there, which I can't imagine was a small amount of money back then.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if we consider 6 is enough to send your child to NYU.
Yeah. 1,000. You send your
That's like
20
Columbia.
children.
It's one for every one of his children that hasn't been murdered yet.
Yeah.
So he's got this like crew of people that he's sort of organizing for the Harper's Ferry raid that doesn't happen, and so they get dispersed for the most part after he delays it for a year. But something that's interesting about them is that they're agnostics, deists, and they sat around at night and they would discuss things relevant to the times like ventriloquism, earthquakes, necromancy, electricity, what happens after you die, mesmerism, and astronomy. And he also was very adamant that no one was allowed to drink in his gang or swear, and like if you found yourself like hitting on a woman or something, you'd have like mock trials for people having like ungodly attractions and shit. He's a fucking lunatic.
You have been accused of going to get that goop. Man, the necromancy part is so good.
Yeah.
Compared with what happens when you die, with the with the like unspoken part being assuming a necromancer doesn't get your body. Because then we know what happens.
The other thing I think is really funny is that given the times, there was like this table reading stuff going on, and there was like phantasmagoria is a really interesting thing, which is the practice of what you do is if you were one of these traveling entertainers, you would take really, really early projector technology on the road, and then you would go and tell a ghost story in like a little saloon at night. And when you got to the part with the ghost, you would kick on the projector, and these people had just never seen a fucking projector before, and so it would look like there was a ghost, So there was less of an understanding of like, oh, that's how you do that, right? And so you were able to trick people and entertain them with really rudimentary stuff. So the ventriloquism thing is really funny because like there's a chance that they were like, do you think the little man is haunted?
Yeah.
Like they didn't understand. He wasn't moving his lips. I don't know. His constitution reformed the U.S. Constitution, but with racial equality. Murder and rape were punishable by death, but it outlawed drinking. It outlawed drinking and cursing. Federally in the Constitution, you can't curse. Filthy conversations.
Really?
It made mandatory like couples therapy. Like you couldn't get divorced.
Couples therapy?
Like if you were in a couple, you had to try to stay together, I guess, was part of his constitution.
Right.
It's
the no divorce part.
But here's what's cool. It also encouraged people to open carry. So you can't curse or fuck, but you can keep that thing on you,
Right.
Oh, wow.
Just as pleasurable.
You can just love your gun. That's it.
Yeah.
Many ways to love a gun.
After Forbes ratted on him, that's when he grew the huge beard and he started using the alias Nelson Hawkins. So,
Wasn't that like a neighbor of his near Elba?
That sounds about right.
What would you have to do to be like John Brown's alias? I mean, that's like a really bad guy to steal your name at this time.
Yeah. Well, it was like a family friend, so I don't imagine that Nathaniel enjoyed that.
Your bush is over the property line. See you, Nelson.
he met Harriet Tubman, and he fucking loved Harriet Tubman, but he thought that she was so tough and so cool, and she also carried a revolver and stuff, if you've never heard that little tidbit of history, that he referred to her with male pronouns and called him the general.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like one of those too woke kind of things where
Yeah.
it becomes
gets
offensive
too woke.
again. Yeah.
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 I respect you so much, I'll call you a man's pronoun.
So yeah, I mean, he was acquiring these people, this guy named Martin R. Delaney, this guy named Stuart Taylor, all these young, like, cool,
Yeah.
up-and-coming assassins and
He
stuff.
couldn't get Harriet Tubman though. He was trying to get that. Like he was trying. That would have been a good get for him.
Probably would have helped if he didn't keep misgendering her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not 100% positive of how this story ends, but, it's probably better for her she didn't join up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Do we
sure.
know Harriet Tubman's pronouns?
I mean,
Oh.
we don't.
Oh, great point,
Question.
Anders.
It's
Anders,
possible.
you're a
Just
good
saying.
friend, Harriet.
It's possible that was just Harriet Tubman's pronouns, but everyone else was like unwoke, and John Brown was cool. But you who knows?
Right. John Brown was the only one who listened.
You just say they. Just say
Say
they.
they.
Okay.
I'm a male Harriet.
He has this Chatham convention. Oh, also he fucking got these two guys into his gang who were a pair of violent Quaker brothers. So they were like the only Quakers that actually believed in taking up arms and like killing people and shit. And they were brothers. Pretty cool. The Coppock brothers.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, but like we said, Harper's Ferry is delayed after the Chatham Convention. The Chatham Convention was a convention he had where he, basically talked out his constitution with a bunch of black intellectuals and abolitionists and stuff. And, but after Forbes ratted on him, he basically had to replan and disperse. And John Brown went to Lawrence and took up the alias Shubal Morgan, starting a little militia called the Shubal Morgan's Men. So he just has all kinds of fake names and shit. He got involved in politics in Kansas a little bit to throw off the scent of his plans in Virginia. Let's see. In Kansas, a Southerner named Charles A. Hamilton slaughters 5 free state settlers, providing John Brown with a reason to basically rehearse for Harper's Ferry. So instead of outright violence, he forms his little Shubal Morgan's company, which is like a protection unit, which, again, no cussing, no intoxicating beverages, but you're a gang and you can kill people if you need to. They come upon the Reverend Martin White, who's the guy who killed... I'm sorry, earlier I said it was Pate that killed his son Frederick. It was this guy named the Reverend Martin White. John Brown decides not to kill him, but only because he was saving up for Harper's Ferry, really. Although he's also got like this weird...
I'm saving my kill load. So I bust hard on the Harper's Ferry.
Yeah. He's also got the kind of a weird morality about him, though, where sometimes he says, like, no, my job is not to kill you. You're not doing the thing right now.
He wasn't in the mood.
Yeah. He founds this group called the Black Strings, which are an underground railroad coordination group with, like, secret handshakes and signs and shit. And they wear black strings on their, like, shoulders or whatever to signify, that they work together to... just to facilitate and protect the Underground Railroad.
And everyone else is like, why do you have those black strings on your shoulders? And they're like,
I'm goth.
Yeah.
I'm goth.
It's a psych garage rock fusion band.
Yeah.
Have you heard of shoegaze?
Yeah.
I was thinking Black Keys. Nope, I got it wrong.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was also thinking.
I was thinking of a way to get them in there.
I just think of the fringes on like leather jackets. Is that what it looked like? Or were they longer strings?
I have no idea. I'm more curious what their gang signs were. That sounds badass.
Right.
String.
We'll make a W
Like
with
they're-
our fingers. For we don't like slavery.
Yeah. Something interesting happened was where he made it back to Potawatomi, and he found out that the people who lived there were totally down with the murders he committed. And I think that probably was a big load off his mind because he clearly had been stressing out about this, but it really reinforced his plan for Harper's Ferry, which is when he started referring to it as the mill in all of his letters.
Historically, I mean, if you look at just killers in terms of their validation, almost no one goes back to the place they did a murder and is like, everyone loved it.
Yeah.
They all thought I was right. It's great.
Yeah.
So the next thing that happens, which will be kind of where we round out today, is that this guy named Jim Daniels is an escaped slave posing as a broom salesman. He comes to Brown and his friend Aaron Stevens and tells him this story that basically him and his wife have escaped from slavery and they're being hunted by slavers and they're going to be brought back to Texas and possibly killed. So he decides to, rehearse a little bit, keep himself in practice, and he goes on a mission to basically fuck up this general by stealing a bunch of slaves from him and helping this guy steal back his wife. I think this might be what Django Unchained is based on, but I'm not sure. So they go raid the two slavers in Missouri, and when when John Brown gets to one of the guy's houses, the guy basically says what are you gonna do about it? And Brown says, we'll smoke you out. And the guy surrenders because he knows it's John Brown.
Yeah.
This guy Aaron Stevens.
Bingo!
Yeah. This guy Aaron Stevens went to one of the other plantations, and he says he's looking for this slave, and the slaver invites him in, and he shuts the door behind him, and then he notices that the slaver locks the door, and the slaver pulls a gun out, but before he can shoot Stevens fucking pulls it out first and shoots the guy to death. It's pretty cool.
Wait, what happened? Sorry, I didn't
this
hear.
shit. So his friend Aaron Stevens, this other abolitionist, goes to free a slave, and he goes into the plantation owner's house, or he goes up to the plantation owner outside. The plantation owner invites him in and says, "Well, let's talk about this." And he correctly surmises that the guy's inviting him in so that he can lock him inside his house and kill him. So he fucking pulls his gun out and kills the guy first because he catches him reaching for his gun.
Oh, nice.
Aaron Stevens is the most do you know Aaron Stevens?
John Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a comic. He killed that slave owner.
Yeah.
Total Aaron Stevens move.
This is all in Missouri, mind you, which was the border ruffian state that was trying to take over Kansas. But like Naomi said, after a while, Kansas started to become filled with free soilers and stuff. So Kansas basically became, a state that was going to be admitted into the Union as a free state, as a no slavery state. And Missouri is still kind of fighting for slavery at this point, and their governor puts a $3,000 hit on John's head, and President Buchanan adds another $250 onto it. So Brown's now a national fugitive, and he simply responds, "I will not be taken." So he's just becoming this hard ass at this point. But after Brown steals these slaves, what he does is, instead of even using the Underground Railroad, he just starts marching in public with his 11 slaves through the woods, just through fields and shit, through towns, back up to Canada, because he's got these guys with just their fucking guns out the whole time, essentially going what are you going to do about it? And he comes upon, there are people that have a hit out on him who actually did not even attack him because they thought that couldn't be him, because that's such a crazy, bold way to be walking around. They just thought, I must own those slaves or something. And
Going for a jaunt with his slaves.
Yeah. But because of the shockwave that this mission sent through that community of slavers, Missourians start selling their slaves because they're afraid this John Brown, like, terrorist guy is going to come free them. And if he frees them, you'll lose money, right? So they don't free their slaves. They just sell them so that they just have the money, and then they just hope, like, I don't know, maybe somebody will kill them or something.
Right. Also, they don't want to be murdered in their homes.
Yeah.
This other thing happens called the Battle of the Spurs, where Aaron Stevens takes Woodsman, he takes this guy. So they bested this captain named Woods, right? And he takes his men back to a cabin and comes out with a gun. Hang on, what the fuck?
Were the slaves?
Or were they like, oh, this is the
Were they
worst?
tired?
Yeah.
So that guy Jim Daniels went and found his wife. I think her name was Jane, and they had a child on the caravan back to Canada, and they named it John Brown Daniels. So, okay, so I forgot. Here's what I was getting at. On the way back, the caravan, basically back to Canada, like a number of different things happens. One of them is that, so this guy Aaron Stevens runs into this captain named Woods, and Woods is like, take me to where you're keeping the slaves. And he goes, okay, I'll take you there. Follow me. And he walks them over to this cabin that he's keeping these slaves in. And he goes, hold on, I'll be right back out with him. So Stevens walks into the cabin. Then he just comes out with a fucking rifle in his hands. And the fucking guy just goes, okay, I get the message. And he leaves, right? He just scares the shit out of him with his gun. It's pretty cool. But later on, the caravan runs into that same Captain Woods, right? And this time he's got like 80 men with him. And he charges them, they charge him, like, just fearlessly, directly fucking forward, which is, like, kind of an unheard of thing battle-wise at this point. And because they scare the shit out of this pro-slave captain so hard, he starts, like, scaring his own horses and stuff. And so, like, his own men are running and jumping onto the backs of other guys' horses that already have, like, a guy on it and shit, or, like, horses that don't have a saddle on it, and their spurs are basically just, like, agitating their horses. So the fucking horses just go running, like, off in different directions. People are falling off of them, being dragged around and shit. That's why it's called the Battle of the Spurs.
What you're describing is a horse tragedy.
Well, the horses aren't, like, killed. They're just, like, you spurs
Greatly
are...
peeved.
Spurs are, like... They go in the back of your fucking boot, and then you, like, kind of use it to poke the horse, which makes it run. But since they freaked out and they were jumping on him and accidentally poking him, they were caught. It was like slapstick shit. They were just, like, falling off of their own horse. Remember that horse that had that cop on the back of it, and it hit that fucking stop sign or whatever in England a few months ago?
Yes, I do remember that, yeah.
That was what happened, basically.
It was this, but all over America.
Yeah.
It was just three amigos all over there.
Let me find this last bookmark. Brown's group labored across the rain-swelled stream. Their would-be captors took flight. Seized by panic, they dug their spurs into the horses. Some soldiers, having lost their horses in the trees, leaped onto already mounted horses, sitting on the animals' rumps behind their comrades. One terrified man grabbed the tail of a passing horse and was dragged off. Those of Brown's men who had horses chased the enemy for 6 miles, returning with 4 prisoners and 5 horses. Meanwhile, Brown had gotten the fugitives' heavy wagon across the creek by having it pulled with long ropes, right? So the Battle of the Spurs bolstered the already powerful John Brown legend, as one newspaper said in the report of the battle. Old Captain Brown is not to be taken by boys. And he cordially invites all pro-slavery men to try to take their hands at arresting them. So the newspaper is now saying, this man cannot be taken by boys. We need men to fight him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Brown's bravado, however, was not accompanied by vindictiveness towards his enemies. He treated his prisoners kindly, as he would during the standoff at Harper's Ferry. To lessen the possibility of his 5 prisoners escaping, he had them walk instead of ride. But to console them, he walked with them, using the opportunity to lecture them on the wickedness of slavery. he reprimanded one of his men who taunted a prisoner, explaining the cowardice of harming a defenseless person. Angry prisoners who spouted oaths prompted Brown's remark, "Gentlemen, you do very wrong thus to take the name of God in vain. Besides, it is very foolish, for if there is a God, you can gain nothing by such profanity. And if there is no God, how foolish it is to ask God's curse on anything." This is reasoning for why you shouldn't say, like, goddamn or whatever.
Well, I'm sold. I think he's going to end slavery.
Thereafter,
He had a hand in it.
Thereafter, the prisoners joined Brown's group in the morning and evening prayers. So he convinced them by yelling at them to join in the prayers that he did in the morning and evening. One of the 5, described as a wild, rattling, devil-may-care kind of fellow, confessed that he knew no prayers. Brown pressed him, saying that his mother must have taught him some prayer. To the amusement of all, he recited, "Now I lay me down to sleep."
No.
It's me.
Yeah.
From Metallica, he said.
After being released, the man reportedly declared that Brown was the best man he had ever met, and he knew more about religion than any other man. The prisoner, though, admitted it did go against a little against the grain to eat and be guarded by the damned. And then he said the N-word. Okay, so the last thing I'll say before we really get into the next episode of Harper's Ferry is that basically this guy's just turning into this character at this point that is like it's cowboy shit. Like at one point he's in this town and he walks upon this guy and there's this dude standing on a crate, because that's just how you speak to groups of people around this time. Standing on the crate and he's yelling at everyone in the town. He's going, "This John Brown is such a coward. He hides in the woods. If I ever saw him with my own eyes, I'd kill him on sight." And Brown's standing right next to him. And he goes, "What's your luckiest day? Because you just fucking found me." And he hands the guy 2 revolvers, like to kill him.
2? Wow.
2.
Wow.
He hands him 2 guns. And the guy just fucking pussies out and he runs away. Very cool shit.
Wow.
All right. So
That sounds made up.
that's where I'm at. We'll get to Harper's Ferry next time.
Ooh, fun.
Anybody got any plugs or anything before we get out of here?
I have a plug. The post office is under attack from Amazon.
Andrews, your interpretation of plug every week.
No, it's an activity for it's a very quick ask of our listeners to call your senator and ask for them to do a bailout to USPS. They need $25 billion, or they're going to go postal on you. You can call them at 833-958-2668. I don't have a senator, so I can't call, but other people, 833-958-2668. A lot of stuff that you can complain to your senators about, and this is one of them.
I'm sure Eleanor Holmes Norton will listen,
Yeah,
even though
listen.
she can't
She'll-
do anything about it.
Right. What we need people who can vote on this shit. So, they're trying to get 10,000 calls in the next week or so.
I'm going to say what Anders said and follow me on Twitter at Patak Jokes, which is PTAK Jokes. And I put all my things on there.
Naomi,
That's it.
You got anything?
Just Naomi Karavani on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram.
Naomi, you're on TikTok?
Oh, you're not on TikTok?
I'm not on
Is the
TikTok. I'm an
question?
adult.
Yeah. No, stand-up videos do pretty well on there, actually.
Really? Do you put them to
Yeah.
songs?
No.
Are you
Though
big
I
on
probably would do better on TikTok. I'm sure. I do kind of want to get into it more, but yeah,
Are you big
Okay.
in China
All
now?
right, cool.
I'm big somewhere.
Russia.
Probably Russia. Yeah.
Do you know about how the TikTok is like just giving all your data to China?
What can they possibly do with
they
the
probably
data,
are.
though?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm more worried about Amazon having my data So
Well, they both have it. They have it on all of us.
They
All right.
for sure have it.
Yeah, I don't know. The Patreon, why you mad? That's it. All right, tune in next week for the shocking conclusion to John Brown.
I can't wait.
Is it? But